The bids are in. The gavel is dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. That's right. This is WineBid's podcast, taking all things wine value, wine retail, wine auctions, and just wine. My name is Jeff McGurn. I'm on the WineBid marketing team. With me, as always, is our wine expert, Paul, the Knight of Noble Rot Walker. Welcome to the podcast, Paul. We have a lot to talk about.
Now you're mixing up your consonants here. Knight of Noble Rots. You've moved on.
We both have the N sound.
Direct alliteration. You're just going for sound.
The sound. Okay. The sound. It works. That's all I know. That's what
does it? I guess it does.
That's what people call you. I don't know. It works. Paul, last night we had an auction. So last night, June 23rd at 7 p.m. Pacific time, we had an auction close. There was a lot of really interesting stuff that was up for auction, especially a lot of really interesting Burgundy. Let's go ahead and do a recap of some of the interesting things that happened last night at that auction close. But sure. we always like to start with a little game that Paul and I like to play of what moved the most. What was our biggest mover of the night? You should know this.
L'Abbé. It was L'Abbé.
It was 100% the 2010 L'Abbé Cabernet Chardonnay.
I was like, come on. L'Abbé is going in for $25. Are we just like playing jokes on people now? That's absurd. I think it's funny because this came from a really awesome cellar. There was an incredible amount of great wine from this collection, a lot of Northwest wine, a lot of Burgundy and stuff, but there wasn't a ton of Jura wines or, wines from places outside of Burgundy, Champagne, and Northwest. But this, I was kind of surprised because I think it was just one of those cases where the wine had never been at auction before. And it was also, I think a lot older than some of the L'Abbé wines we've seen.
No, it had been right. Hadn't been
not the 2010. So I think, and it's also, I feel like one of those wines where, recent vintages are much more kind of sought after. And actually, if you look at the sales history, right, some of the more recent, like the 17s, 18s, 19s, they go for quite a bit more than this actually hammered for. So I think things are a little bit different back from 2010, but still.
580% increase.
$25 start was pretty silly.
If in 2012 you had bought 20,000 cases of this wine,
I don't even know if 20,000 cases of Chardonnay are made in Europe, the whole entire appellation.
Number two. We're going stateside for number two.
Okay.
It's not a region.
Is it? No, I was going to say it's maybe something from the Northwest just based on stuff that was in the auction.
It is from the Northwest. It is from the Northwest.
Really? Is that one of those Irie wines?
No, it is not an Irie wine.
Maybe something rarer than that. I don't know. I have no idea.
98 Cameron Winery.
Oh, Cameron. Okay.
Okay. Started at 45. Hammer,
yeah, that's
55.
Yeah, 45. That sounds pretty cheap for a 98. What did it hammer at?
155.
Yeah, so I mean that was a legendary vintage, and I remember picking out a bunch of late 90s wines from. Well, again, it's from this collection that the L'Abbé came from, same cellar actually, and there was the Clos Electrique, which is always quite expensive, from 99. I think it started at 95 and hammered at 110, so that was in line. But yeah, 98 Pinot Noir starting at 45 seemed pretty darn cheap. So yeah, hammer at 155 makes sense there. Although it's kind of funny that the Clos Electrique actually hammered for quite a bit less. The 99 Clos Electrique hammered at 110. And the Pinot Noir hammered at 155. Typically, the Electrique is a lot more expensive. But anyway, that's fun to see.
244% increase. Then let's head back over to France, but this time Burgundy.
Okay.
Domaine 2010 Domaine AF Gross Vosne Romani Aureas started at 75. 7 bids took it. All 6 of them. There were 6. 7 bids took them to $150.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, great vintage. That's a great wine. I remember tasting this wine at the cellar actually years and years ago, not the 10, but earlier vintages. The 05s were really, really good, but they were expensive. And Aureas that's a nice parcel. The Leo D, I believe. It's not, I don't think it's Premier Cru, but I could be wrong. Anyway, is, it's kind of interesting because I think this was in auction not terribly long ago. I guess it's been a few years, but I mean, it was way, way less. Hammered for $47 in 2019. So that's quite an increase.
I mean, that's a crazy increase.
Yeah, and it was going for more too. That's the funny thing. Years earlier, it was actually going for more. So it dropped, to 47. I think it was the lowest price it ever hammered. But anyway, great wine, and still doesn't seem like that crazy of a price when you consider some of the, we were talking about the Ligier Bel Air Von Romani, the stuff. Yes. I think it was a similar situation where it was like the Leo D wine was $1,400 or something. Yes. It's incredible. So
yes.
Anyway,
back over to the States. 2021 Peter Michael Les Pavots, 3 liter. Signed.
Oh yeah, was this the one from 2021?
Yes, 2021.
Okay.
Started at 320.
Yeah, 320. I was 100. Like, that's a steal. And Peter Michael's had a kind of a funny history at auction. There were quite a few large format bottles of this wine from many, but they were much, much older, from the, I want to say, early 2000s, maybe even some late 90s, that we had coming out of a pretty incredible cellar a couple of months back. Had a bunch of Diamond Creek and a bunch of really wild stuff. But I saw this and I was like, that's a fairly almost brand new release.
Yes.
And that's got to be like hundreds less than what the winery is charging at this point, because that stuff is really expensive. And so 320 did seem, 600, I'll still bet it's more expensive at the winery than that.
Oh, for sure. A signed etched bottle. This
it's probably $1,000 at the winery.
Oh yeah. If you could even get it at the winery, maybe.
Yeah, if you're on the mailing list, I don't think you're necessarily allocated 3 liters of Les Pavots unless you've been on the list for a long, long time. So.
Or this could very well be like a charity auction thing. Anytime I see like a signed bottle, I think like...
Yeah, it looks like it was donated by the winery for an auction specifically. But I know this wine came from a personal collection. So that is kind of interesting. So you're right. Yeah, maybe it was bought from an auction.
So coming in, our next one, 82.5% increase, non-vintage, Falais, Prévostat, Nandos, Grand Cru Blanc de Blancs, started at 40, hammered at 73, which...
Wow.
Stuff like that doesn't surprise me, because I don't know that you can get, multi-vintage Veuve Clicquot orange label for less than $73 anymore, right? Like
True.
That's kind of around what people are paying for stuff that's not even sort of as interesting or as something like this.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. There was a lot of really kind of, to me, obscure and under the radar champagne in last week. This bottle in particular is very interesting because I'm looking at the label and it looks like a French only release, or at least this particular bottle was not actually exported to the US. It has the slash to the pregnant woman drinking sign, which is not used by the United States. But anyway, interesting wine there, interesting hammer too. And I think there were kind of a lot of examples. I saw there was wine just below. I was confusing it with actually the other wine that started with Falais Guron, Extra Brut, Grand Cru Blanc de Blanc, which obviously a totally different producer, but also it's interesting too. The label is almost exactly the same.
But here's the other interesting thing. We sold 2 of these bottles at auction last night. One of them sold for $52.
Oh, really?
Yes.
One of the Falais Prévostat or the Falais Guron, because they actually look very, very similar.
Prévostat. This exact bottle, we sold 2 yesterday. One sold for 52. This one sold for 73.
This is mysterious because the labels are almost identical. So I wonder. Well, that's something only an expert would know, which I am not, even though Jeff calls me one.
You seem like an expert to me. You seem quite a bit.
That's a mystery.
20.
But yeah, Forget. There was also at Forget Chemin. Speaking of lesser known champagnes, Forget Chemin 13 Special Club Brut, I think jumped up quite a bit too. Well, no, a little bit.
I will say
66.
That Falais Guron that you were talking about, and you're right, they do look almost exactly the same.
Almost exactly the same, except for the name. That's it.
That one had a 70% jump up from 40 to 68.
Right.
But that one's not non-dose, right? That's, I think, the other thing about the Falais Provençat is non-dose, which I don't know, maybe that's a thing.
Yeah, this is extra brut, so it's going to be slightly off dry too. Whereas, yeah, the non-dosé is going to be bone dry, assuming they are made, in a certain style. I don't know, but I don't know anything about them. But and also really hard to tell, like, how old they are, because the labels look new and in great condition, but there's no, disgorgement.
They look like brand new
base vintage information or anything.
It looks beautiful. The capsule looks beautiful. Like the whole bottle.
There's a little L30 like code underneath the 750 ml. I don't know if that might refer to, vintage or disgorgement, but I have no idea how to decipher that. So not very helpful.
2010 Circuit Bouchard in Florence, in Florence. I'm like butchering that. Not my day. En Florissance. Blanc de Noir, disgorged April 2012. Started at 180, hammered at 320 for a
So, it's funny. Older examples of this, of Cedric Bouchard, are really hard to find, right? So anything disgorged, I would say, before like 2017 or something is going to be rare, and it's going to go for some money, and that's a very good example right now.
We had a 2008 Robert Moncuy Extra Brut Grand Cru Les Chatillon Blanc de Blanc, disgorgement April 2015. Started at 115, hammered at 196 for a 70% increase in price. A lot of champagne moving in terms of price, but we also had a lot of like off the beaten path sort of rare champagne. So I'm not like super surprised, right?
Yeah.
And then I'll round us out with a nice GG 2015 Battenfeld, Spanier, Nida Florsheim, Frauenberg, Riesling, Grosses Gewachs. Started at 30, hammered at $50.50.
Battenfeld Spanier, another producer I'm not familiar with at all. Wine also came from the same cellar as a lot of those Northwest wines and champagne. So that was a very serious, dare I say, expert collector who let go of his collection. So
I will say there was even more like champagne making making moves as well.
Yeah, no, all kinds of crazy champagne last week. And like I said, a lot of it came from the same source. So really awesome collection.
Really cool stuff. I'll note a few kind of unique lots that we saw move. 6 liter of 2000 Cheval Blanc sold for $56.50. Bottle. 6 liter of 83 de Chem sold for $25.40. And a 6 liter of 2000 Le Conseillant sold for, after two bids, sold for $16.05. That 96 Salon Les Mesnil Blanc de Blanc sold for $12.65. And then 99 Macedo, after two bids, sold for $9.50. And then this I thought was super interesting. We had this 1947 Chateau Coutet mag.
There was a bunch of them.
There were a bunch of them, but there was a lot of two that got bid up to $940 a bottle. And then 8 other mags sold for $675. So
that's amazing.
Someone got into a bidding war on the two.
Yeah, they didn't see the other ones.
They didn't see the other ones.
They were all pretty much in the same shape. It looked like, I mean, slightly different fill levels, but they were all basically the same.
That's what I looked at. There was only one that I thought maybe was not as good a shape as the others, but you're right. There were like out of the maybe 10 of them, 9 were in about the same condition, but there was only a bidding war on 2. And then somebody else snuck in and grabbed the other 8 of them at reserve price. And then that 91 Ridge Montebello had 2 bids taking it to $650. So some movement.
Yeah. That's interesting to see, actually, that 91 Montebello getting multiple bids, because like it hadn't been in auction for a long time. And then all of a sudden a bottle popped in a few weeks back, and then there was another one, and then last week another one. But I think it continues to go up in value just in the space of a couple months. It's because it's rare.
It's rare.
And it's really, really good. I haven't had it in a while, but it's phenomenal wine. It's kind of a legendary California wine, I would say.
Let's turn to some of the interesting things that have come into auction. and are new in auction this auction week. So this auction week is ending June 30th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Pacific time. So anything we talk about, if you're listening to this before June 30th, 2024, 7 p.m. Pacific, you can go online and you'll be able to bid on any and all the stuff we're going to mention. Let's start in the United States. We're going to do the whole world today because there's not so much coming in auction that we don't think we can get through it. I'm going to run through some interesting stuff. I mean, of course, I know I'm going to take this away from you, but you were going to mention the Wine Spectator's #2 wine in 1999, which of course, as you know, is, because Paul memorizes this.
Wait, let's see if I can guess. 1999 was when the release or the issue or whatever.
Yeah, 99 was the issue.
So 2. It's probably like 96 or 97 vintage.
96. Yeah, correct. 96.
#2, and is it Cabernet?
Probably predominantly Cabernet, but it's
so it's like a red. Is it Cardinale?
No.
Oh shoot, I can't remember. What is it?
Opus One, 96.
Oh, okay. I did notice there was a lot of Opus from, was it like through the 90s, right?
Yeah, there's a bunch of Opus from the 90s.
Yeah.
I saw this. I was going to ask you about this 94 Dominus Estate for $345. Now we also have the 97 for $245, 2000 for $165, 09 for $220, 2012 for $240, and the 16 for $295. Paul, between those, what's your pick of the litter?
The 91, which you didn't mention. That's the one I would pick.
Is it I don't think it's an auction.
It is. Yeah.
It is?
Yeah, it is. The 91, 92, 94, 97. I picked all of those. And then, because that's one of the best California wines I've ever had, period. But the 94 is very interesting at $345. I think it's finally starting to show well. You and I tried it, a couple months ago in New York. It was fantastic. The other thing I wanted to point out was, in addition to all those amazing vintages from the 90s, there is a 6-pack of the 19 for $1,500, which I think is actually a great deal when you look at some of the other more recent vintages. I think the 16 is up, and some other years. I'm not looking at it right now, obviously, but the 19 6-pack for $1,500 to me is a steal, because I think, the wine's going for quite a bit more. If you can find it, it's really hard to get at retail. And I don't believe they actually sell at all on a mailing list. It's all sold direct, through restaurants and very limited retail. So anyway, the 19 looked like a good deal at $1,500, but
definitely looks like an interesting deal there. 2014 Rhys Alpine Vineyard Pinot Noir Mag. We got that for $100.
That's funny. I picked the same thing. I picked all the mags that were like around $100 to $140 because they're great deals. Alpine Pinot Mag for $120. I thought, that's way less than winery cost, and you've got more than 10 years on it. So great deals there.
That stuff's going to be like just smoking. Tons of Dariouche if you're interested in Dariouche, like a page and a half of Dariouche. Yeah,
and I noticed the Darius too is quite expensive in the auction. It goes for like over $250 in a lot of cases. So I think it has quite a following.
It's got quite a following. People are interested in that Dariouche, especially the Darius too. I picked out the 16 Cardinale for $170. I thought that was interesting. This 85 Jota Howell Mountain Cab for $120, I thought was pretty cool.
Oh, I missed that. Yeah.
This one I thought was interesting. 2012 Pax Castelli Night Ranch Syrah for $45. I thought that looked super interesting. I may check that one out. 65 Charles Krug Vintage Selection Cabernet Sauvignon for $315.
Yeah, that's a rare one.
That's a super rare one. I thought would be extremely interesting. This 09 Lillian Winery California Syrah already has a bid on it, taken from 50 to 51. I thought that looked interesting. Some interesting. I don't know. I picked out a bunch of interesting Syrah.
Yeah.
This 06 Arnaud Roberts Griffin's Lair Syrah for $40. I thought that was interesting. There's a bunch of interesting stuff. And some of these are producers I'm not experienced with, but like Heston Vineyards. Mm-hmm. I'm not familiar with them, but there's like some really interesting stuff coming in from Heston. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with this Amazetta?
Yeah, it's good wine. It's expensive too. So I think I picked the 17 complexity, which I haven't tasted it, but it's got a bid or had a bid last night. It looks like at $46. And that I thought was a steal because it's not cheap stuff. And all of a sudden there's a bunch of it on the site, but it's quite good. Heston, I think, is a Thomas Brown made wine, if I'm not mistaken. I double check on that. But anyway, yeah, it was interesting to see both Amazetta and Heston, like a whole bunch of it. Somebody obviously on their list, and they're just unloading it.
Are you familiar with this P Vineyard stuff?
Oh, Pay? Yeah, no, I picked all of those because the wines are awesome.
They all have bid, like almost all.
They're super good. Yeah, and they're hard to find. They're limited production, and these are all 10 plus years old. Well, not all of them, but I picked the 13 Dominus Estate Pinot and the 12 Syrahs and the 12 Scallop Shelf. They're great wines. They're really, really good. And Andy Pay has kind of like a following of his own, just, winemaking. So yeah, great stuff.
I love me some Anthill Farms, and boy, do we have some cool Anthill Farms.
Yeah, and it's great deals. Again, they're all kind of like in this 10-year plus range, and and younger, obviously. But again, the 12 and 13s are just steals at $35.
Yeah, and
for a whole bunch of them too.
Some Pinot and Syrah. So. Like there's some really cool stuff, and I don't know that I ever had a bad wine from Anthill's Farm.
No, they're great. They're great. Yeah, they can be a little bit on the leaner side. Some of the Pinot Noirs are very kind of elegant and lean style, which is to some people's liking. But I think they're excellent.
2013 Covert Estate Sage Estate Cabernet Sauvignon for $85. Two of those, one has a bid on it.
That's definitely less than the winery. That stuff's expensive.
This one, you're going to need to explain this to me. 2018 Devil Proof Faro Ranch Malbec, $500.
That might be a mistake, but I don't know. That's strange.
It's got.
I'm afraid I can't explain that to you.
I was like, but here's the thing. You look on Wine Searcher and like this wine, by all accounts, is not cheap. The average is like $350 on Wine Searcher.
Yeah, I know it's expensive, but that is wild. And it looks like it's actually sold for. Yeah, no, it's sold for $520 before. So yeah, wow, that's amazing.
I was like, oh, okay. The bunch of Aon Air stuff that looks interesting. Yeah. I'm not familiar with this. I figured you might be able to provide some context around Aon Air.
Yeah, it's funny. I've talked to somebody who's been a collector and been to that property, and they said, "Oh, you should check out these wines." And I didn't even know they made stuff other than Cabernet, but
Grenache.
There's Grenache, yeah, and there's Syrah as well, right? Yeah. No, very interesting stuff and super small production, but we do see bottle here and there of the Cabernet. But yeah, all of a sudden this week there's this batch of I wonder if, and I can look this up, but I wonder if like the Amazetta and the Heston and these other wines like from you were just mentioning obviously are all from the same cellar or not, but I should look it up and find out.
It wouldn't surprise me. No. 2013 Empriente Molds Vineyard Cabernet Sauvignon. I thought that looked interesting. Has a bid taken for $60.61. And of course, I had to note that we've got the 2018 Antinori Napa Valley Townsend Cabernet Sauvignon in for $56 now after bid. I thought that was interesting to see that. What anything in California that I missed here, Paul?
Yeah, no, lots of cool things. I think I always like to kind of pick out the Cade wines because they bottle the reserve cab and screw cap and cork, and they have a mixed case 6-pack this week of 16 reserve cab. So I think there's 3 each in screw cap, if I'm not mistaken, and 3 with corks. I always like what they're doing, and the wines are pretty good. And it's $870, I think, for the 6-pack. There's some pretty serious Colgan in this week, some Syrah, but there's also the 13 Cariad and the 19 Cariad 3-pack. You mentioned the legendary Dominus lineup there. Yep. There's some, I put a note in my picks that this wine was much less than the winery. There's some 2022 Illumination Sauvignon Blanc, which is actually pretty rare Sauvignon Blanc from Quintessa. I don't see it very often, but somebody dumped a case in this week for 35 a piece. I thought that was a great deal. There's some Cap Chandy half bottles of the '08 State Lane, the Grand Vin, it's called, which I think are very cool. They're super hard to find. And then let's see that. Yeah, there's a really nice 90s lineup of Laurel Glen Sonoma Mountain Cab, which I love that stuff. It lasts for years and years. It's really, really good. And yeah, there's 90 through 99, basically all the great vintages of the 90s represented. Some great Literai in this week, including Hirsch, a couple different bottlings of the Hirsch 11 and 12, which I think is just, it's amazing stuff. 15 McDonald popped in this week also. Some Radio Couteau, including, again, like 10-year-old, examples. There's some 13 Harrison grade Syrah for $40, which I thought was definitely a good deal. Another, I believe, Sonoma Mountain kind of rarity called Repris, which I was reading about. I've never tasted it before, but I think it's super small production, hard to find, quite expensive. But anyway, a couple bottles of that in of the 11 for 86. There's a nice lineup of Ridge Chardonnay, actually, 17, 18, 19 Estate Chardonnay from Ridge. 75 Mondavi Reserve caught my eye. I was thinking, for a 50th birth year wine for next year, this would be a good one. Because I think prices will probably go up for those 75s. And right now they're, way less than 74s or 78s. So I thought, the 75 Mondavi Reserve for $275 was not bad at all. 85 Spotswood popped in, was a great wine. Haven't tried it in years, but amazing wine. 15 Ulysses, which is the other Christian Wex project from Oakville, so just north of Dominus a little bit. And there's not a lot of it. It's hard to find as well. Anyway, 15 in for 120. And yeah, that was kind of my arrangement of California wines this week. You mentioned that Arnold Roberts, I mentioned one of the Pinot Noirs from 14, I thought was a good deal, was $40. Great. Oh, one more, sorry, from Central Coast. Alban Riva 11, I thought was amazing at $75. I had the Lorraine not too long ago from 11, and it was just amazingly good. I was really impressed. So I saw the Riva pop in for 75. I'm like, that's a great deal. It was kind of a tough vintage in Napa and Sonoma, but Central Coast, there were some really, really good wines. So anyway, 11 Alban Riva's got to be phenomenal these days. If it's anything like the Lorraine, which I just had, it's got to be great.
Let's jump over to Oregon, Northwest. Some interesting stuff. I'll just point out we had a couple bottles of Antikythera Chardonnay, a 19 Chlorine, and a 2020 Arata for $135 and $200 respectively. Came into auction. I picked out some of these Walter Scott ex Nova Vineyard Chardonnays.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
There's an 18, 19, and a 21 for 85, 90, and 80. I thought those looked really interesting. There's tons of Erie coming into auction this week, like 75 lots of Erie wines if you're into Erie. You like Arterberry? I got Arterberry for you. We got 14 Arterberry wines coming in to auction this week. Lots of Winderly, 36 lots of Winderly, all very reasonably priced if that's your jam. And I thought these Analema wines looked interesting. I haven't tried Analema, but I
don't know them at all.
I was looking at those and reading some of the tasting notes and stuff, and those looked like ones that I might be interested in.
Yeah.
Looks super, super interesting. And that's what I had for Oregon. Anything that I'm missing in Oregon, Paul, that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, no, I definitely wanted to point out, the Arterberry Moresh Chardonnay, that's supposed to be very, very good. There's 17 Estate in for $50. And then Pinot Noir as well. Some more Cameron came in, 2010 Cameron Clos Electrique snuck in this week. Also Kelly Fox. I thought the 19 Moresh from Kelly Fox Wines, the Pinot Noir, wasn't bad. It's got bids at 61, a couple bottles there. Also, I guess it's not from Oregon, excuse me, but there's Kobayashi in, which we don't see too often. And some of the Roussanne came in for 2022, brand new release. There's some older Soder wines, some Mineral Springs Ranch Pinot Noir from '08, and also white label. And there's also the North Valley Reserve, which is quite inexpensive actually for the 2012, $25. Yeah, tons of Irie, including Chasselas if you're into that variety, and Milan also, and obviously Chardonnay and Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier. So yeah, just crazy lineup of Irie stuff. It's weird too, because I thought maybe this was like a second batch from that big cellar we had last week, but it's not. It's entirely its own collection from somebody else. But anyway, it followed this amazing Northwest collection we had last week. So anyway, yeah, it's this great lineup of all sorts of different Irie Vineyard stuff. And then there's some Thomas in there too, almost like a vertical of Thomas Pinot Noir. So yeah, those Winterly wines are very inexpensive. I'm very curious as to how they taste, but lots of things, again, for, 10 years or more of age, and they're $25 for some of the Pinot Noirs. So,
you get some fantastic deals.
Yeah, great deals this week.
Heading up to Washington, you bet. Yes, we got bets.
There's a lot of bets, and it's expensive now, right? I mean, the winery prices for that stuff they're not cheap, I would imagine. So
hey, I mean, this is, I think, good way to save money if you want some bets. A lot of stuff has bids on it. Lots of Sheridan Vineyard wine.
Yeah, I don't know that wine at all, but there is a ton of it.
There's a ton of it. I don't know that at all. I was looking, the other few I was looking at was this 2014 Rasa Vineyards Veritas Sequitur SJR Vineyard Syrah for 60. But that looked interesting. This 2015 Roti Cellars Northern Blend for 35, and the 15 Delmas SGR Vineyard Syrah for 50. We have a couple of those. I thought those looked interesting from Washington. That's
cool. Yeah. Delmas, I think we had talked about, I saw some pop in, I don't know when it was, at least a couple months ago, but then they are related to the famous, Rhone producer as well. So that's kind of an interesting parallel, but yeah, not surprising.
Should we head over to France?
Sure. Are you going to start with, let me guess, Bordeaux?
I was going to say, let's start with Burgundy. I only have a few Bergs to mention this week. I thought it was interesting to see this. We've got like 85 Ruchberg from DRC in for $40.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was quite a standout.
That's going to be, I'm really curious to see what happens with that, to see if that ends up hammering this week, or we see that sit around for a little while before it goes. But the last time we sold that was in 2018 for $29.50. So, be really, like I said, very interested to see where that price goes. And then 08 Costerie Bourgogne Rouge for $190. I thought that was interesting. If you want to try Costerie, 08's not the best year in Burgundy in the Côte de Nuit, but it's Costerie for under $200. So there it is.
We're going Rouge too. I mean, it's known more for Chardonnay, but still, that'll be fun to try. I was going to say, I had the 09 not too long ago, and it was very good. So I'm sure it's delicious.
I'm sure it's a great wine.
Yeah, I'm sure it's great.
15 Comte Lafon Merceau Charmes for $370. I thought looked really interesting. Couple bottles of O2 Vincent Dovesa that I saw. There's a La Forest for $200 and 3 bottles of Le Clos for $325. I didn't think, I guess $200 isn't exactly cheap, but O2 is a great year. And I'll bet you that La Forest and the Le Clos are just amazing.
Oh, I'm sure they're great.
05 Henri Gauge, Nuit Saint-Georges, Les Saint-Georges. Already has a bid on it, taken from $225 to $235. This 05 Nicolas Potel, Chambertin, we have 2 of those at $360. And then the last one I had on my list that I'm watching is this 17 Domaine Poisson Romani Saint Vivant for $200.
Yeah, I saw that. Poisson, I don't know that producer, but I picked it as well just because there's not a whole lot of Romani Saint Vivant out there to begin with. So yeah, I don't know who Poisson is, but something to look up and find out about. So
Grand Cru 17, great year, for that price. It just, I don't know, that didn't seem too bad for me.
No.
You know what I mean? In fact, maybe I shouldn't have mentioned it. maybe I'll go buy some plus.
I don't think it's going to go unnoticed. That vineyard hardly ever does. So
no. What did you have on your list, Paul?
Yeah, more of the mostly, I should say, wines that you also picked. Couple of nice bottles of Lafon for sure. Clos de Labarde 15 and 18 as well. Doissac Camus from '08, which I thought was great. La Forêt. And then there was a Conférence Côte d'Or Souchot from 15 for 150, which definitely caught my eye. Tortochaux Chambertin 2012, 165, didn't seem bad. And yeah, AC Dovisat 08 Chablis at $80. It's probably the last time that 08 is going to be under 100. Pierre Boisson Meursault 17 looked really, really tasty as well. So yeah, that was what I picked out.
Let's go over to Bordeaux. Just a few picks for Bordeaux, probably not surprising picks. 85 Mouton for 400. We have two of those. I didn't think that was too crazy.
Yeah, a couple lots, right? I think there's two separate lots.
There's two separate lots with one 90 Latour for 735.
A couple of those too.
Yep. 86 Lynch Bage, three of those for 160. 95 Liavel Las Casas, we got two of those for 205. At 165, we have a bottle of 05 Pontet Canet, which is good, but we had that Pontet Canet last month. I felt like you could still use a lot of time in the bottle. Like to me, it was still a little bit tight, but still a delicious wine. 09 Pontet Canet with one bid. Well, we've two of them, both have a bid on them, taking from 215 to 225. 86 Pichon Lalande.
Yeah, that's such good wine. So good.
Two of those for 265. 03 Montrose, three of those for 200 apiece.
That seems like the price is going up for that. I want to say it wasn't over 200 recently, but we've been talking about Montrose nonstop. It seems like all the time. So
finally hammered effect. No,
exactly. That's got to be it.
In February, earlier this year it was 175, 185. Right. And it's been around that price for quite some time. So to see it come in at 200 was a bit surprising to me. I'm curious to see if that's going to come down a bit and roll. 89 Vieux Chateau Sauton, those for 240. 95 Chateau Pavie Massouin.
Macun.
I don't know. Yeah. Actually, we have two of those. Both have bids on them taking from 85 to 86. What other Bordeaux do you want to highlight, Paul?
No, you picked everything I picked as well. I think the one other wine was the 04 Domaine de Chevalier Blanc. It's got some bids at 90.
I saw that.
Yeah, the white wine is always quite sought after, but that's really, really good, delicious stuff now. So yeah, no, those were my picks as well. And 86 Chateau Sauternes, which is probably next to the 89 is going to be not as showy and delicious, I would imagine, but still it's an interesting bottle. So
champagne wines, we've got lots of Dom Perignon coming into auction that have come to auction this week. I won't go through it all, but I'd say if you're a Dom fan, go check it out. There's a lot of stuff. Paul's favorite champagne, the Armand de Brignac Brut. Isn't that? I think that's
Ace of Spades, huh? Right on.
Paul buys based on the label.
Exactly. If you can feel it and it's made out of metal, then that's the label I'm going to buy.
That's what he's going to buy. If it's shiny, he buys wine like my 5-year-old buys stuff, right? It's just like if it's shiny and sparkly.
If it's very tactile, if you could really grip the actual label physically, then
that's right.
That's important.
That's right. One that I thought looked interesting, but I was curious to get your thoughts on. Not cheap. This multi-vintage Marie Noelle. Le Jru, Grand Krug.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I was reading that I noticed we had a bottle of this or a couple, I think, in last week. And one of our colleagues had written about it in an email out to our customers. And I didn't know that the winemakers retired. So these are actually quite collectible. It's another wine where, there's very limited amount produced. Yeah. And you also, I think, unless sort of, if you have inside information on the importer, or you're in the trade or somehow know what's going on, you could potentially find out, what the disgorgement dates are or base vintage, that kind of a thing. But I also heard from a friend of mine who just had some of this recently, and he said it was phenomenally good. So now I'm kind of like, now I want to learn more about the Le Jru wines, because it looks like the photo was imported after the fact. It looks like a for French only kind of production, if you will. the front label, and then the back label is, at least the wine that was in before it was imported to Oregon. So anyway, I'm very curious about these wines and definitely want to try some. So yeah, that's stuck out for me.
A little write-up I was reading on her. Marie-Noëlle Ledru is her name. Descended from 4 generations of vignerons working the land on the southern Montagne de Reims. And apparently she took the reins in 1984 for 32 vintages. She built champagne, made champagne, and
retired in 16, right? That was 16. The last vintage.
And they basically said if Eily Aurier is the king of Ambonnet, then Ledru was surely its queen. So her vines were 85% Pinot Noir, 15% Chardonnay, average of 40 years of age, located on Ambonnet's best terroir. I guess they say that basically she followed in the footsteps of her ancestors and did all the steps of winemaking herself without compromise. I'm sure she had some help, but really, really interesting wine. And I wanted to point that one out because I thought that looked like it was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Little piece of history. Always cool to see women winemakers. In the Loire, we've got some Clos Roger, a few lots of Clos Roger coming to auction this week. But that was interesting. I think all in all, they're 7 bottles, 13 Sommer Champagny, 14, and then the 2012 Les Pouilloux.
Oh, sorry. I was like, why did you jump into Loire already? I had some champagnes to mention, but that's okay.
Yeah, no, you don't.
No, wait, hold on. 08 Cristal, did you see that?
Yeah, of course I saw the 08 Cristal.
Yeah, 08 Cristal, there's a full case, or I should say 12 bottles, because it's not really a full case of half bottles, but 12 bottles of 375 mLs of Grand Cuvée label number 5, and 115. I actually didn't think it was terrible. 05 Jacquesson, Champquin, for 215. There's an old, and by old I mean even older than the 2010 that was in last week, Cédric Bouchard Rosé de Sagné Cru d'Enfer for $9.95. So that one is not cheap, but quite rare. And so now you may continue with your Loire wines.
Oh, well, thank you, Paul. Well, I'm done with the Loire wines already. It's a bunch of...
You're done?
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of Roger.
Rougiard. Yeah, Clos Rougiard. So we make sure people know what you're talking about. I just want to make sure.
2011 Domaine Thierry Allemand Cornat Sans Sucre.
Oh, you're down to the Rhone now. You're flying all over the place.
Yes, I said we're down to the Rhone. This one has a bid on it, taken from $875 to $925.
Well, this is the super limited, sans soufre label, if you will, and it's really hard to find. Comes in only once in a while. There's a bottle of 12 Reynard in too, but yeah, that's a rare one.
We've got the 08 Auguste Clap Cornat for $140. Mm-hmm. I picked out this 2013 Domaine JP and JL Jamais Côte Rôtie. Already has a bid on it, taken from $215 to $225. And this 05 Domaine La Baroche Chateauneuf du Pape Cuvée Pure for $145. It's the
high point wine from Baroche. It's good stuff.
Chateauneuf du Pape.
Very, very pure wine. Yeah, there's going on white in this week. Saint Joseph Blanc. It's collectible. I'm sure that'll sell. There's only a couple bottles of it. Also from Jamais, there's the Côte de Rhone Red, which I've actually never had, but it's quite a bit less than the Côte Rôtie. Looks like the 10's got a bid at 36, but the other two, the 13 and the 08, are at 40. So, yeah, some fun Rhone wines in this week for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, and Grand Colline, forgot. There's some Grand Colline Cornas and Le Canon, which is probably like a sort of like a Côte de Rhone. But the Cornas, this is rare stuff and not nearly as expensive, I would say, as some of the other super micro cuvée Cornas out there. Although I don't know for fact, but I believe it's sort of on the natural ends of things. So anyway, Grand Colline, did want to point those two out because we don't see them very often. And Michael Bourg also. Michael Bourg Cornas Le Petit Pou is in this week as well. So
all right. Well, now we're heading to Italy. Okay. We'll put the cap.
Okay.
Put a cap on.
All right, we're leaving France
A bunch of cool Bruno Giacosa that is coming to auction this week. I picked out just the 01 Barolo that's 170. I didn't think that was too crazy. But a lot of cool stuff from 90s, early 2000s. Really, really neat stuff. 96 Giacomo Conterno Barolo Casina Francia for 325. You got two of those. 96 Paolo Scaviano Barolo Brick del Fiesque with three at 120. A lot of cool 96s. Right. 19 Bartolo Mascarello Barolo for 285. We also have the 16 for 400, 17 for 200, 18 for 220. Some cool Produttori del Barbaresco, the 08 Asili Reserva already has a bid on it, or three of them have bids on them, taking from 105 to 115. And the 11, we've got 10 of those at 130. So you want to put up some cool Produttori del Barbaresco with some age on it, you could definitely make that happen this week. A lot of cool 2010s. 2010 Giuseppe Figlio, Moro, Mascarello, Barolo, Monprivato, three for 175. 01 Aldo Conterno, Barolo, Busia, Sicala, six of those at 145. 96 Clerico, Barolo, Siabot,
Tribo Menton, Ginestra. There's a bunch of it.
A bunch of those, two of those, 130. There's this 2010 Cavallotto, Barolo, Brico, Bosquis, 20 for 105 a piece. So if you want to pick one of those up, you'll definitely get it. Some Pia Cesario Barolo for two of those at 65 from 2000. I thought that was pretty cool. So 24 years of age. 01 Conterno, Fantino, Barolo, Ginestra, three of those at 185. 2010 Giacomo, Finocchio, Barolo, Villero, five at 75. And then this 2010 Ilio Altare, Barolo, Arborina, yeah. For 96 a piece now after bids. Just like a lot of really cool high-end Barolo with some good age on it.
Yeah, exactly. So they might be ready to drink in 10 more years.
If you're lucky.
There were some 99s too. I saw 99 Aldo Conterno Jacala was in there. Yep. Yeah, and Jacozas look really, really nice and really good shape too. They're like, I think some of these are all original owners and they've been stored really well. Conterno Fantino 99 Stored in Astra looked really good as well. There's some Giacomo Conterno Barbera, which you don't see too often. It's way less than the Barolo, of course. There's a mag of the 08, in fact, at 130, which is not bad. But I mean, you're not going to get near the complexity of the Barolo, but it's still quite good. So
let's head to Tuscany. Boy, a lot of cool stuff in Tuscany too. I'm not going to mention all of them, but there's a lot of really good 2010 Brunellos, and that was a phenomenal year for Brunello. Just check those out. 14 Antinori Ticinanello for 145. 97 Valdicava Brunello de Montalcino for 115. Two of those. 115, that's not much more than you're paying for Valdicava on release, which I think is cool.
It was always expensive, but that's not bad for something
that's not bad for Valdicava with 27 years of age. 1997 Fattoria di Felsina Fontoloro, two of those at 45 apiece. 2013 Conti, Costanti, Brunello de Montalcino, two of those at 70 apiece. 04 Isole y Oleno Chaparralo. Yeah. 10 of those at $65 a piece.
Yeah, that's great.
2010 Castello Romitorio Brunello de Montalcino Reserva for 95, two of those. 1987 Grappone Mazzi Brunello de Montalcino, one of those for 60. 2010 Albat Reti Brunello de Montalcino, two of those at 40. And in 1997 Le Masioce Brunello de Montalcino, two of those at 75. So just like a bunch of stuff that's got a lot of age on it, dating back even as far as the 90s, with some really reasonable prices.
Yeah, the 90 and 97 Fontoloro were very cool, especially 97 for $45. That's a good deal, for something that much time on it. And that was a very ripe forward vintage, and in Tuscany it was a big deal. I remember when it came out. But anyway, Yeah, no, lots of cool stuff for sure. That La Ragne 2010 Brunello is very good. Although I will say it is wound up. So if you do open that, I would give it a lot of time, a lot of airtime, because it's a monster. But yeah, some really, really fun stuff for sure.
In Campania, we've got 2013 Gallardi, Terra di Lavoro, 2011 Terradora di Paolo Taurasi, Fatica Contadina for 25. So some interesting stuff from Campania. I'm going to skip Australia today. From Austria, there's an 07, two bottles of Prager, which are cool. One of them has a bid on them, but this 07 Prager Dürnsteiner Hollerin Riesling Schmargard for 50, and then a 07 Riesling Schmargard for 46. Two of them having bids on them. And then the only other thing that I would mention is this in Portugal. There's a 1914 Barbietto Malvasia Madeira Reserva for $7.75. So, I mean, you're talking, this is a great bottle for that friend of yours who's turning 110 this year, and you don't know what to get them. We've got a nice bottle of 1914.
That's a good point for an anniversary. Yeah, birth year bottle. That is pretty amazing, actually. 1914.
Or if it's your 110th wedding anniversary this year, the only downside is that this particular bottle, it did not make Wine Spectator's top 100 wines of 1916. So, take that into account. But actually what's interesting is you look at this bottle back in 2021, it was selling for $1,200. It has come down because we've seen this come into auction a few times.
Yeah.
$7.75. So
yeah, I think some of these older Madeiras definitely prices were pushed a couple of years back, and they've kind of come back to earth. So that's a good example.
Yes. And with that, let me just say all the stuff we've mentioned, you can find an auction, the auction and bid on. This auction ends June 30th at 7 p.m. in 2024 Pacific time, or rather June 30th, 2024, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And as a little thank you for listening to our podcast, if you use the word NightK9GHT, you get $15 off an order of 150 or more just this week. That's going to expire June 30th, 2024. So go use that. If you're going to buy something, get $15 off. With WineBid's finally hammered, this has been Jeff McGurn and Paul Walker wishing you happy bidding, and cheers.
Cheers.